At 2:17 in the morning, the emergency room called to say my husband might be having a heart attack, but no one warned me I would find him holding hands with the woman he had been sleeping with. The phone shattered the quiet of our bedroom so violently that I knocked my glasses, a jar of hand cream, and the framed photograph from our 10th anniversary onto the floor. Daniel's side of the bed was cold. He had left our Chicago condo at 7 that evening for what he called a private dinner with investors, and I had fallen asleep believing the same explanation I had accepted at least 20 times that year. "Mrs. Bennett," a woman asked when I answered. Her voice was calm in the practiced way of someone who delivered bad news for a living. "This is Mercy Harbor Medical Center. Your husband, Daniel Bennett, was brought into our emergency department. The physician needs you to come as soon as possible." I asked whether he was conscious. "He is stable right now, but you should come." Those last 4 words turned my bones to ice. I pulled on jeans, a gray sweater, and running shoes without socks. In the elevator, I imagined every disaster except the one waiting for me. Daniel had been complaining about pressure in his chest. His father had died at 57. Maybe he had collapsed at the restaurant. Maybe he had been mugged while walking to his car. Maybe the black sedan he drove too fast had finally met a patch of ice he could not charm his way across. As I drove south along an almost empty Lakeshore Drive, the city looked rinsed of people. Traffic lights changed for no one. The lake was a black wall beyond the guardrail. Every few blocks, a recent memory rose up and accused me: the new password on Daniel's phone, the showers he took, the moment he came home, the shirt that smelled like a perfume I did not own. I had questioned him once, and he had kissed my forehead as if calming a child. "You're exhausted, Claire. The foundation is consuming you." He knew exactly how to turn my instincts into a character flaw. I had spent 12 years building Bright Steps, a non-profit that funded after-school programs and scholarships for children on Chicago's South and West Sides. My work was demanding. My mother had developed heart failure the year before. Daniel used both truths like curtains, drawing them across whatever I was close to seeing. At Mercy Harbor, the lobby smelled of disinfectant, burned coffee, and fear. A nurse with silver braids checked my identification, then hurried me through 2 sets of doors and down a fluorescent hallway. I saw Daniel's shoes beneath the curtain of Bay 6 before I saw his face. One expensive loafer lay on its side. The sight of it made me nearly run. Daniel was pale and damp with sweat. Electrodes crossed the broad chest he was so proud of, and an 4-line disappeared into his left arm. His eyes were closed. For half a second, I was only his wife. I moved toward him with every year of our marriage inside me: the first apartment with the leaking ceiling, the miscarriage he had held me through, the Sunday mornings when he made pancakes shaped like terrible hearts. Then I saw Rachel Stone. She sat on the other side of his bed wearing a cream silk blouse buttoned one hole wrong. Her mascara had left dark half-moons under her eyes. Her hair, normally sleek for the office, clung damply to her neck. One of Daniel's hands lay beneath both of hers, and she was stroking his wedding ring with her thumb. Rachel was his regional acquisitions manager. She was 34, 12 years younger than Daniel and 8 years younger than me. I had met her at his company's holiday gala, where she laughed before Daniel finished his jokes and seemed to know how he took his bourbon. He later told me she had moved from St. Louis after a painful breakup and had no family in Chicago. Out of kindness, or perhaps some instinct to bring a thread into the light, I had invited her to Christmas dinner. The cashmere coat hanging over the chair beside her was my gift. Rachel looked at me first. Her grip loosened, but she did not release Daniel's hand. He opened his eyes and followed her stare. In 12 years of marriage, I had seen Daniel negotiate deals worth millions without blinking. That night he could not hold my gaze for 2 seconds. "Claire," he whispered. I did not ask the obvious question. The wrong button, his bare chest, her coat, and the intimacy of their terror had already answered it. A physician stepped through the curtain carrying a tablet. Her badge read Dr. Tessa Morgan, Emergency Medicine. She glanced from Daniel to Rachel to me, understood more than she wanted to, and pulled the curtain shut. "Mr. Bennett, Ms. Stone, we have the preliminary results," she said. "Your cardiac markers are normal, Mr. Bennett. The chest pain appears to have been caused by a severe reaction to medication combined with alcohol. Both of you also tested positive for chlamydia, and Ms. Stone has a secondary pelvic infection that requires immediate treatment." The monitor beside Daniel kept beeping. Rachel covered her mouth. Daniel's skin went from gray to white. Dr. Morgan continued gently. "Any recent sexual contacts need to be notified and tested. Untreated infection can cause serious complications." She looked at me then, not with pity. Exactly, but with the discreet compassion women sometimes offer each other when language would make the humiliation worse. "Mrs. Bennett, we can arrange testing for you tonight if you would like." My body felt as if it belonged to someone across the room. I heard myself say yes. I heard Rachel begin to cry. I watched Daniel lift his free hand toward me. Claire, please. Let me explain. I stepped back before he could touch me. You don't get to put your hands on me until I know what you put inside my body. Dr. Morgan's face did not change, but Rachel flinched as if I had struck her. A billing coordinator appeared a moment later with a clipboard, visibly wishing she could disappear. I'm sorry, she said. I only need to confirm the emergency payment authorization. The debit card ending in 0448 was charged at 1:51 a.m. for both patients' current balances. The card is in the name of Claire M. Bennett. For the first time that night, the betrayal became almost too absurd to absorb. My card paid for her treatment? The coordinator checked twice. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Bennett provided the card from his wallet and entered the PIN. Daniel stared at the ceiling. The card was tied to my personal checking account, the one into which Brightsteps deposited my salary. I kept it for household emergencies. Daniel had never been authorized to use it, but 3 weeks earlier he had offered to pick up my prescriptions and return the card to the little tray in our kitchen. I had not noticed him study the PIN when I typed it at the pharmacy. I looked at the 4 running into Rachel's arm. The amount on the billing sheet would have funded 3 full summer program scholarships. I lifted her cashmere coat from the floor, folded it neatly, and placed it on the chair. My hands were so steady that they frightened me. I bought you this because Daniel said you were alone at Christmas, I told her. I had no idea you were borrowing my husband too. Rachel bent forward, crying harder. He told me you were separated. Daniel snapped his head toward her. Rachel, stop. There it was, the first crack in the story they had agreed to tell. Separated? I asked. Was I sleeping in an invisible bedroom? Rachel looked from him to me. He said you were staying together until your mother's health stabilized. He said you had an arrangement. We celebrated our anniversary 6 weeks ago. He posted the photographs himself. Her eyes widened. Daniel started speaking quickly, using the smooth, low voice that had sold waterfront towers before they existed. Claire, she misunderstood. This got out of control. It was one mistake, and I was going to end it. Which part was one mistake? Sleeping with your employee? Lying to both of us? Giving us an infection? Or stealing my debit card to pay the bill? He had no answer that could survive being said aloud. I signed the forms for my own tests and followed a nurse out of the bay. Daniel called my name twice. I did not turn around. In a small examination room, a nurse drew blood while I stared at a poster of the Chicago skyline. The familiar buildings looked like pieces from another life. When she finished, she touched my wrist. Do you have somewhere safe to go tonight? The question embarrassed me until I understood what she meant. Betrayal could become dangerous when exposed. Daniel had never hit me, but he had controlled conversations so expertly that I had stopped recognizing control as a form of force. The condo is mine, I said. He is the one who needs somewhere else. I returned to Bay 6 only to collect my coat and keys. Rachel had been moved for imaging. Daniel sat upright now, his expensive shirt draped across his lap. Please don't leave like this, he said. I panicked about the bill. I had your card. I wasn't thinking. You knew my PIN. We're married. Marriage is not permission to steal. He rubbed both hands across his face. I love you. Those words had once made me feel chosen. In that room, they sounded like a man reaching for the only key he thought still worked. Then what do you call what you did to me? A terrible mistake. No. A mistake is missing an exit. You built a second life and sent me the medical bill. I left him under the white hospital lights. Outside, freezing rain had begun to tick against the entrance canopy. I sat in my car for almost an hour, not because I did not know where to go, but because I understood that once I started the engine, I would be driving away from the person I had been. The old Claire fixed problems. She made schedules, called specialists, forgave late arrivals, and translated Daniel's selfishness into stress. She believed endurance was proof of love. At 4:26 a.m., I called my sister Maya in Milwaukee. She answered on the first ring. Claire? Is Mom okay? Mom is fine. Daniel is in the emergency room. What happened? I tried to say it cleanly. I made it as far as Rachel's name before my voice broke. Maya did not interrupt. She let me cry so hard I could barely breathe. Then she said something I would remember for the rest of my life. Do not go home and negotiate against yourself before you know the facts. Maya was 5 years younger, blunt. Where I was diplomatic, and incapable of being charmed by Daniel. He called her difficult. She called him a showroom with nothing behind the walls. What do? I asked. Freeze the card. Change every password. Photograph every account you can access. Then call a lawyer before you tell him anything. I'm getting dressed now. You don't have to drive down. I know. By sunrise, the debit card was frozen, my passwords were changed, and 3 years of statements were saved. Maya arrived at 7:40 with coffee and a charger. When I worried that disputing the hospital charge was cruel because Daniel had been sick, she shook her head. Compassion does not require financial illiteracy. Daniel texted that he was coming home. I told him to stay at a hotel until my attorney contacted him. He called 14 times. I did not answer. At noon, I sat in the office of Linda Cho, the attorney who had drafted our prenuptial agreement in 2012. Linda was small, silver-haired, and so precise that even her pen seemed to stand at attention. She read the hospital paperwork, my bank alert, and the message Rachel had sent me at 6:03 that morning. I am sorry. I believed him. I know that does not excuse what I did. Linda removed her glasses. The affair matters emotionally, she said. Legally, the unauthorized use of your account, the health endangerment, and any misuse of corporate funds may matter more. Your agreement has a misconduct provision tied to dissipation of assets, fraud, and intentional exposure to documented health risk. It is unusually specific because you insisted on protecting the assets you inherited from your mother. I had forgotten how hard Daniel fought that clause. At the time, he said it made our marriage sound like a criminal contract. My mother, who had built a chain of 4 neighborhood pharmacies from nothing, told me a trustworthy man should not fear language that punished fraud. Can he take the condo? I asked. It was purchased by your family trust before the marriage. He can challenge the agreement, but that does not mean he will win. The first thing I need is evidence. Do not delete anything. Do not threaten him. Do not post online. And do not let him back into the residence without a controlled plan. Linda slid a yellow legal pad toward me. Write down everything you remember, even what seems unimportant. Betrayal feels like chaos. Cases are won by chronology. So I began with 2:17 a.m. Daniel did not obey my message. At 3 that afternoon, the concierge called to say he was in the lobby demanding access. Linda had warned me that I could not simply erase his residency rights, so Maya stood beside me while I told the concierge to send him up. I turned on my phone's audio recorder and placed it face down on the kitchen counter. When Daniel entered, he looked less like a man recovering from an emergency than a man arriving late to a negotiation. He had showered, shaved, and changed into a navy sweater I had bought him. He carried white roses and a paper bag from my favorite bakery. Maya stared at the flowers. Did the hospital remove your shame with the 4? This is between my wife and me. You made it between at least 3 people. For if we count the billing department. I raised a hand before they could turn my marriage into a contest of insults. You can pack clothes and medication for 2 weeks, I told him. Maya will stay in the living room. I will stay in the kitchen. We are not discussing reconciliation today. He placed the roses on the counter. You called a lawyer, didn't you? The speed of the question told me he had already called one too. You should pack. Claire, listen to me. Rachel pursued me. I was weak, and I let it happen. She is unstable. She has been threatening to tell you whenever I tried to end it. I thought of Rachel beside the hospital bed, frightened and sick, still holding his hand. She had betrayed me, but Daniel's instinct was already to make her responsible for his choices. Did she steal my card too? His jaw tightened. I said I panicked. I didn't know whether the insurance would cover her. You were worried about her credit but not my health. I never knew I had anything. Then you were careless with both of us. That is not a defense. He moved closer and lowered his voice. We have built too much to throw it away over a few months of stupidity. Think about the board at Bright Steps. Think about your mother. Think about what people will say when this becomes public. That was the moment I saw the real weapon. He knew shame had kept me quiet about our miscarriage, his gambling losses 6 years earlier, and the time he had screamed at me in a hotel room because I questioned a charge. He believed I would protect the picture of our marriage even after he had smashed everything inside the frame. I am thinking about my mother, I said. She taught me not to keep spoiled medicine because the label was expensive. His expression changed. The sorrow disappeared, leaving anger beneath it. Your mother never liked me. My mother recognized you. He packed in furious silence. Before he left, he turned at the front door and said, if you turn this into a war, don't assume you are the only one with lawyers. Maya waited until the elevator doors closed. There he is, she said. That is the man I was waiting for. The next 7 days moved like a fire drill. I attended Bright Steps meetings while waiting for results, smiled at donors, and reviewed scholarships. After a 10-year-old named Jamal described the robot he wanted to build, I cried in a restroom because Daniel had spent more on one hotel suite than Jamal's entire summer program cost. My results came back on Thursday. Positive. Dr. Morgan called personally. She explained the treatment, follow-up testing, and the complications we needed to watch. Her language was calm and clinical. Mine was not. I asked whether a single encounter could have done it. She said yes. I asked whether she could tell how long I had been infected. She said no. I asked questions until I ran out of questions and was left with the fact that my husband's lies were no longer outside my skin. I sat in my car beneath the hospital and called Daniel. He answered immediately. Claire, thank God. I've been trying to give you space. My test is positive. Silence. I'm sorry. That is what people say when they spill wine. What do you want me to say? The truth. How long? It started in October. That is 5 months, not a few mistakes. We weren't together every week. The precision of his defense sickened me. How many times did you come home from her and touch me? Claire, don't do this to yourself. You did this to me. I ended the call and forwarded the medical report to Linda. 20 minutes later, she sent me a draft petition for divorce. That evening, Daniel returned under the supervision of a security officer and a neutral property coordinator. He saw the divorce petition on the dining table. 12 years, Claire. You are ending 12 years in 1 week. You ended them in installments. I am only closing the account. He promised counseling, resignation, and full access to everything, then accused me of performing moral perfection when I refused. I felt my old reflex to defend myself and let it pass. At the door, he looked around the home we had made. I did love you. Maybe you loved being loved by me. He left without answering. 2 days later, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. Mrs. Bennett, this is a lease grant from Vantage Urban Properties. I lead employee relations. I understand there may be a personal matter involving Mr. Bennett and one of his direct reports. Daniel was Senior Vice President of Acquisitions at Vantage. He supervised 6 regional managers, including Rachel. I told Elise that my attorney should be present before I discussed anything. Her next sentence made my hand tighten around the phone. Of course. We are contacting you because an internal expense review identified charges to company accounts that may also involve your personal financial information. Linda joined a video call that afternoon. Elise and Vantage's outside counsel appeared on screen from a glass conference room. They were careful not to disclose Rachel's private medical information, and I was careful not to supply more than the documents permitted. Then Elise shared a list of charges already under audit. There were 11 hotel stays over 4 months. Daniel had categorized them as investor meetings, site inspections, and recruitment expenses. Several occurred on weekends when he told me he was visiting his father's grave or helping a colleague through a divorce. One room had been booked on my birthday. He had left our dinner early because, he said, a boiler had burst at a development in Evanston. The company card had also paid for jewelry, theater tickets, a weekend in Napa, and the cream silk blouse Rachel wore at the hospital. Daniel had disguised some purchases as tenant relations gifts. Beside 3 transactions was a reimbursement account ending in the same 4 digits as my debit card. How did my account enter your system? I asked. Elise looked uncomfortable. That is what we are trying to determine. Mr. Bennett submitted a request to change the destination account for certain reimbursements. The authorization form appears to carry your signature. I had never signed it. Linda leaned toward her camera. Please preserve the original file, metadata, submission logs, and any associated emails. We already issued a litigation hold, the outside counsel said. The forgery was the first revelation that shifted my pain into fear. Daniel had not merely spent company money on an affair. He had routed reimbursements through my personal account, then moved the money elsewhere. On paper, it could look as though I had received funds from fraudulent expense reports. Was he trying to implicate me? I asked after the company representatives left the call. Linda did not soften her answer. He may have been hiding the money from the company, from Rachel, from you, or from all 3. Intent will require evidence. For now, assume every financial document needs examination. We hired a forensic accountant named Noah Patel. Within 48 hours, he found small Vantage reimbursements entering my emergency account and nearly identical sums leaving for Northline Strategy LLC, a supposed research firm Daniel used on deals. Its registered agent was Victor Hale, but the receiving account used Daniel's phone number. From your account alone, $86,400 moved through in 18 months, Noah said. Because each deposit left quickly, the monthly total barely changed. My name and a forged signature now sat between Vantage and a shell company. Noah found another $214,000 paid directly to Northline through repetitive invoices Daniel had approved. This is bigger than adultery, Linda said. Was Rachel involved? We don't know. I wanted to hate her without qualification. It would have been easier. But the hospital memory would not stay simple. She had believed something, though not enough. She had accepted gifts, rooms, and a version of me erased for her convenience. Yet Daniel had been her direct supervisor, 12 years older, powerful enough to affect her salary and career. He had lied to her too. Harm did not cancel responsibility, but responsibility could be shared unevenly. Rachel called the next morning. "I need to talk to you," she said. Her voice shook. "Daniel says you are trying to blame me for the company charges. My attorney will be present. He told me not to speak to anyone. He said he can make sure I never work in real estate again." "Then you need your own lawyer, not me." "I have one. She says I should give the company my messages. But there is something about you that they don't know." We met 2 days later with attorneys present. Rachel wore plain black pants and no makeup, both hands around an untouched paper cup. Her messages showed Daniel claiming our marriage was over, inventing separate bedrooms and an agreement that allowed other relationships. He described me as unstable and warned Rachel that contacting me might make me harm myself. Then she opened an email titled Contingency. If Claire questions the reimbursements, remind her she approved Northline for the foundation project. She forgets paperwork when she is overloaded. Do not discuss the destination account. I will handle it. Rachel admitted preparing 3 demographic reports after Daniel claimed BrightSteps needed discrete property research. A $7,500 bonus she believed came from his consulting income had actually come from Northline. The second revelation was worse than the first because it showed intention. Daniel had laid groundwork to say I authorized Northline through BrightSteps. He counted on my workload and my position at the nonprofit to make confusion plausible. If the scheme surfaced, he could point toward his wife, the executive director who supposedly needed property research, and his employee, the ambitious subordinate who prepared reports. He had built 2 women into his escape route. "Why tell me now?" I asked Rachel. She stared at the phone. "Because at the hospital, when the doctor said we both had the same infection, he whispered that you must have given it to him." For a moment, no one moved. "He said what?" "He told me you had been seeing someone from your board. He said that was why your marriage ended." I wanted to believe him, even then. Her eyes filled. "But when you said you were positive a week later, he texted me that if I cooperated with HR, he would tell them I infected both of you and stole his company card." That's when I understood he was preparing a different story for each room. I did not forgive her in that conference room. Forgiveness would have been too simple and too theatrical. But I stopped seeing her as the center of the betrayal. Daniel had placed us on opposite sides of a mirror and told each of us the other woman was dangerous. "Give your evidence to the company," I said. "And keep every threat." Rachel nodded. "I am sorry for what I did to you." "You should be." She accepted that without flinching. "But Daniel does not get to hide behind either of us," I continued. "Not anymore." For 2 weeks, I lived inside hospital records, expense reports, statements, and screenshots. Daniel's attorney accused me of blocking his residence and conspiring with Rachel, then demanded support because Vantage had suspended him. "He wants you angry enough to make a mistake," Linda said. "Be angry in here. Outside, be accurate." Accuracy became my revenge before I was willing to call it revenge. At BrightSteps, the spring scholarship campaign continued. I had not told the full board about Daniel's affair, but I disclosed the potential financial fraud the moment Noah found the false references to our foundation. Our board chair, Evelyn Ross, ordered an independent audit. I supported it. I expected questions. I did not expect the anonymous email sent to every director 24 hours later. It alleged that I had directed corporate reimbursements through my personal bank account, used BrightSteps demographic data for a secret real estate venture, and accepted money from Vantage through my husband. Attached were 2 invoices carrying the BrightSteps logo and what appeared to be my electronic approval. The board placed me on paid administrative leave that afternoon. Evelyn came to my office in person. She had known me for 9 years and had celebrated when we funded our 1,000th scholarship. She closed the door and looked close to tears. "Claire, I do not believe you stole from this organization," she said. "But belief is not governance. The documents require an independent response." I understood. I had written some of the policies she was enforcing. Still, when security escorted me to the elevator with a box of personal items, the humiliation was almost physical. Staff members stared over their monitors. Jamal's robot drawing stuck out of the box between a photograph of my mother and a chipped mug that said "Make good trouble." Outside, a local business reporter waited beside a camera crew. "Ms. Bennett, did BrightSteps funds finance your husband's consulting company?" I froze. The board had met less than 2 hours earlier. Someone had timed the anonymous allegations and the leak so the accusation would reach the sidewalk before I did. Linda stepped between us. "Ms. Bennett is cooperating fully with an independent audit and will not comment on fabricated documents." The story aired that evening with my wedding photograph beside the words "nonprofit executive under review." Daniel's face had been cropped out. For the first time since the hospital, I wanted to disappear. Not leave the city or close my accounts. Disappear. Bright Steps was not only my job. It was the cleanest proof I had that my life mattered beyond my marriage. Daniel knew that. He had not merely threatened my reputation. He had aimed at the place where I kept my sense of worth. My mother called from her assisted living apartment. Her voice was thin from medication but unmistakably fierce. "Come here," she said. I drove to Oak Park in rain so heavy the expressway disappeared beneath red taillights. Mom was 72, with white hair she refused to dye and hands permanently rough from decades of opening boxes in pharmacies. Heart failure had narrowed her body but not her attention. She made me sit at her kitchen table while she heated chicken soup. "I saw the news," she said. "The invoices are fake." "I know." "How can you know?" "Because you alphabetized your crayons at 5. A thief would have bored herself to death in your body." I laughed, then covered my face. "He is taking everything. My health, my work, my name." Mom sat beside me. "No. He is throwing dirt on everything because he knows the ground under him is opening. Dirt is loud when it lands. That does not make it the truth. The board had to suspend me. Then let them investigate. You built an organization strong enough to examine its own leader. That is not your failure." She took my hand and turned my wedding ring around my finger. "Your father embarrassed me too," she said. I looked up. My father had died when I was 19. Mom rarely spoke about the difficult years before his death. He had another family for almost 2 years. Not children. A woman and her mother whom he supported across town. I found out when he used the pharmacy account to pay their rent. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you loved him, and because I confused silence with dignity." I stayed. He stopped seeing her, but he never stopped blaming me for knowing. When he died, everyone called us devoted. I accepted the compliment and felt like a fraud. She tapped my ring. "I insisted on your trust and that misconduct clause because I wanted you to have an exit I did not take. Do not turn my one useful regret into another woman's cage." I removed the ring at her kitchen table. A pale band circled my finger. "I don't know who I am without him and the foundation." Then for a while, "Be my daughter. That identity is available without an audit." I slept on her sofa that night, wrapped in the same knitted blanket she used when I had the flu as a child. At 6 the next morning, Noah called. "We found the source file for one of the fake Bright Steps invoices," he said. "The metadata identifies a Vantage laptop assigned to Daniel. But there is more. The document was created 8 months ago. 8 months. Before Rachel said the affair began. Before the hospital. Before Daniel could claim he fabricated evidence in panic during the divorce. He had created a defense before I knew there was a crime. The independent auditor received the metadata, bank records, and proof that Bright Steps had never contracted with Northline. The original demographic files had been publicly available reports. Rachel had repackaged them at Daniel's instruction. No donor funds had entered or left my account. Every suspicious deposit came from Vantage, and everyone moved to Northline within hours. 3 days later, the board restored my system access but kept me on leave until the final report. The news station updated its story online. The correction appeared beneath the original headline in smaller type. My name had been bruised publicly, the repair came as a footnote. Then the third revelation arrived from someone none of us expected. Victor Hale, the registered owner of Northline, called Noah and asked for immunity. He was not a real estate researcher. He was Daniel's college roommate and the best man from Daniel's first wedding, a marriage Daniel had described to me as a 6-month mistake in his 20s. Victor had debts, a suspended contractor's license, and a talent for signing documents without reading them. Daniel paid him $2,000 a month to lend his name to Northline. Victor brought a hard drive to Vantage's attorneys. It contained invoices, text messages, and recordings of Daniel explaining the arrangement. Daniel had insisted on recording planning calls through an encrypted app because he feared Victor would forget instructions. Victor, fearing Daniel would deny everything, had recorded the calls again on another device. In one recording, made 10 months before the hospital, Daniel said, "If this blows back." Claire's account received the reimbursements. Her foundation uses the same demographic work. Rachel prepares the files. "There are 2 fire doors before anyone reaches me." 2 fire doors. That was what he called us. In another recording, Victor asked what the money was for. Daniel laughed. "Freedom costs. By next year I'll have enough to leave without Claire controlling every asset." The money had accumulated in a brokerage account under Northline's name. Its balance was $391,000. Some came from false invoices. Some came from padded reimbursements. Nearly $90,000 had passed through my account, creating the appearance that I received and redirected it. Daniel was not planning to leave because he loved Rachel. He was preparing to leave with money and a story that could destroy both of us if anyone investigated. When Simone played the recording for Rachel, she left the room and vomited. I did not witness it, but she told me later. Daniel had promised her a house in California, a job at a company he would start, and a life without secrecy. Meanwhile, he described her to Victor as useful cover with a pretty face. The affair had been real. So had the manipulation. Those truths could exist together. Vantage fired Daniel for cause the next morning. The company announced that it had referred suspected fraud and forgery to law enforcement and was pursuing restitution. Rachel was also terminated for failing to disclose the relationship and for preparing improper reports, but Vantage's letter acknowledged her cooperation and Daniel's supervisory misconduct. She lost the career she had gambled on him. He lost the career he had used as a weapon. Daniel called me from a blocked number after the news broke. "You destroyed me," he said. His voice was not apologetic. It was astonished, as if consequences were a natural disaster I had ordered. "You recorded yourself. Victor is a criminal. Rachel is a liar. Noah is working for you. Everyone has an agenda. What was mine? Control. It has always been control with you. Your condo. Your trust. Your perfect foundation. I was a guest in your life. So you stole enough to buy one? I built your public image. I introduced you to donors. I attended every dinner. I deserved security. I remembered the years when I thanked him for wearing a tuxedo twice a year while I worked 60-hour weeks. He had translated proximity into ownership. You deserved honesty," I said. "You could have asked for a divorce. And leave with nothing? There it was. Not love. Not loneliness. Not Rachel. Arithmetic. You had a salary larger than mine. You had retirement accounts. You had choices. You don't understand what it felt like to be married to someone everyone respected. I understand now." I ended the call. My hands shook for 10 minutes, but I did not call back. The divorce hearings began in May. Daniel challenged the prenuptial agreement, claiming pressure and inadequate counsel. Linda produced records from his independent attorney, 6 weeks of negotiated revisions, and an email he wrote 3 days before our wedding. I agree that intentional financial misconduct or knowingly exposing a spouse to serious health risk should eliminate any claim to the other spouse's separate property. I have no intention of doing either, so the provision is irrelevant. When Linda read the email aloud, the hearing room became very still. Daniel sat opposite me in the charcoal suit he wore when he wanted to look humble. His attorney argued that he did not know he was infected. But medical records showed Rachel warned him about symptoms 9 days before the hospital, and their messages showed he dismissed her concern while continuing to sleep with me. "You're probably stressed," he had written to her. "Do not create a crisis." He used the same method on both of us, renamed the danger, then accused the woman who noticed it. Security footage also showed Daniel taking my card from his wallet and entering the PIN without hesitation. A bank representative confirmed I had not authorized it. His attorney called it a marital expense. Linda called Rachel's treatment neither marital nor mine. Daniel offered to waive his condo claim if I paid $450,000, stopped assisting Vantage, and called our separation the result of mutual mistakes. I almost admired the nerve. "No," I told Linda. "We can counter. No money. No false statement. No protection from evidence. Trial carries risk." "I know. But if I buy his silence, he gets to sell me my own name." Linda studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Accuracy, then." At the final evidence hearing, Rachel admitted knowing Daniel was married and accepting gifts. When his attorney called her a rejected lover seeking punishment, she answered, "I want the truth recorded. Punishment is not my decision." She did not make herself innocent, which made her credible. Victor authenticated the recordings, and Noah traced the false expenses through my account into funds Daniel controlled. Then Linda called Daniel. Daniel's divorce claims required him to explain certain assets. He called the reimbursements household income until Linda displayed the Northline transcript. "Did you refer to your wife and Ms. Stone as 2 fire doors?" Victor edited those recordings. "Did you provide an expert report supporting that claim?" "I could not afford one because my wife froze me out financially." "Your disclosed retirement account held $312,000 when this case began, correct?" He hesitated. "Approximately. And you withdrew $80,000 after receiving the divorce petition?" "For legal expenses. Including a $22,000 transfer to a woman named Lauren Pierce?" His attorney stood so quickly his chair rolled backward. I had never heard that name. Linda had not warned me because the transaction arrived in discovery the night before and she did not know what it meant. Daniel's face told us it meant something. The judge ordered him to answer whether Lauren was a legal service provider. He said no. Whether she was a family member? No. Whether the transfer repaid a documented loan? No. Rachel, seated behind Simone, closed her eyes. Lauren was a broker in Vantage's Denver office. Phone records later showed Daniel had been contacting her for nearly a year. She had opened a new company 3 days after he was fired. The $22,000 was labeled startup capital. The fourth revelation did not hurt the way the first 3 had. By then it was almost clarifying. Rachel had not been the future Daniel was stealing toward. Neither had I. There was always another room, another account, another woman who had been told she was the exception. Daniel had not betrayed us because one relationship tempted him away from another. Betrayal was the structure in which he felt most powerful. The judge enforced the prenuptial agreement in a written decision 9 days later. She found that Daniel had received independent counsel, negotiated voluntarily, and concealed marital financial activity while creating documented health risk. He received no interest in my condo, my family trust, or the investments funded from my salary. The court ordered him to repay the unauthorized hospital charges, my treatment costs, and a portion of the forensic fees. The disputed Northline money was frozen for the company and criminal proceedings. The decision did not describe karma. Courts do not speak that way. It used phrases like credible evidence, dissipation, material misrepresentation, and adverse inference. I found those words more satisfying than any dramatic speech. They did not humiliate him. They made him accountable. Outside the courtroom, Daniel waited near the elevators while Linda and Noah spoke with Vantage's attorneys. His lawyer had already left. For the first time since I met him, he seemed to have no audience. "Claire," he said. "Can we talk for 5 minutes?" "No. You got everything. The condo, the trust, the judgment. You won. This was not a prize I wanted." "Then why do you look so calm?" I considered the question. For months, he had expected my pain to prove his importance. If I screamed, I was unstable. If I cried, I still loved him. If I recovered, I was cold. Every possible emotion became evidence in a story he controlled. "Because you are no longer the person who decides what my feelings mean." He glanced toward the other end of the hall. "Rachel testified because you promised to help her." "No. She testified because you threatened her." "Victor lied for a deal." "Linda turned our marriage into a spreadsheet." "Your sister always hated me. Everyone wanted this." "You still think the problem is the number of witnesses." His mouth tightened. "I never meant to make you sick. But you did mean to lie. You did mean to use my account. You did mean to prepare documents with my name on them. You did mean to make Rachel carry your blame. Intention is not one door you can close while leaving all the others open." The elevator arrived. I stepped inside with Linda. Daniel put a hand between the doors. "Did you ever love me?" It was a cruel question disguised as a wounded one. He wanted my past tenderness to rescue his present self. "Yes," I said. "That is why what you did was possible." He removed his hand. The doors closed on his face. The Bright Steps audit found no donor fund misuse, unauthorized contract, or connection to Northline. The board reinstated me, shared the full report, and adopted my proposal for 2-person review whenever a leader's household member appeared in vendor records. Shame taught me to hide. Accuracy taught me to build better doors. On my first day back, my team filled my office with paper stars. Jamal's message was written in green marker: "I saved the robot drawing for you, but you already took it." I sat behind my desk and cried in front of everyone. No one looked away. There are tears that make you smaller because another person uses them against you. There are also tears that prove you have reached a place where you no longer need armor. The news station ran a correction: "Audit clears Bright Steps director, former Vantage executive under fraud review." I declined interviews. I did not want to become famous for surviving my husband. I wanted to return to being useful. Recovery was not cinematic. Antibiotics cleared the infection without permanent complications. Therapy taught me that danger could echo after it ended. Late-night calls still twisted my stomach, and disinfectant could send me back to basics. I saw how much of my life had bent around Daniel. Spicy food, mystery novels, noisy friends, and colorful art had vanished because he dismissed them. Our home had faded into expensive beige. Maya helped me repaint the dining room deep blue. We ordered Thai curry and laughed until a neighbor knocked on the wall. I bought a huge red and gold canvas Daniel would have called intense. Intense was a word men like Daniel used when a woman occupied more emotional space than they had assigned her. I began running along the lake before work, 8 minutes, then 2 miles, then 5. I ran because each breath proved my body belonged to me again. At sunrise, Lake Michigan held a promise too large for anyone to forge. Mom's condition worsened that summer. I spent evenings at her apartment sorting medication, making tea, and listening to stories she had never told me. She apologized more than once for keeping my father's affair secret. "You were protecting me the only way you knew," I said. Protection without truth expires, she replied. Remember that. She lived long enough to attend the Bright Steps annual gala in October. We funded 62 new scholarships that night, more than in any previous year. When I stepped to the podium, I saw her in the front row beside Maya, wearing a scarlet jacket and an oxygen tube. The room rose to applaud the programs, the students, and, though I had asked them not to, my return. I did not mention Daniel. I spoke about trust. Trust is not the absence of questions, I told the room. It is the confidence that honest questions will not be punished. The children we serve deserve institutions that can withstand scrutiny, correct harm, and keep their promises even when doing so is uncomfortable. Mom pressed both hands to her heart. She died peacefully 6 weeks later. Losing her reopened every wound I thought had closed, but grief for someone who loved me honestly felt different from grief for a living person who chose deception. Mom's absence hurt because there had been something real to miss. She left me a handwritten note inside the old pharmacy ledger I had seen on her shelf all my life. Claire, never confuse being needed with being cherished. Many people needed the doors I opened. The right people also cared whether I made it through them. I framed the note and placed it beside Jamal's robot drawing. Rachel wrote to me 3 months after the divorce became final. Her message was longer than the first apology. She had moved back to St. Louis, completed treatment, and started working for a small property management company. She was attending counseling. She did not ask me to forgive her. I was vain enough to think being chosen by a powerful man made me powerful too, she wrote. I ignored what I could see because his version gave me what I wanted. He lied to me, but I also betrayed you. Both are true. I am sorry. I read the message twice before responding. I believed him because his version gave me what I wanted too. That does not make our choices equal, but it is something I understand. I hope you build a life that does not require another woman to disappear. We did not become friends. Some stories force women into a comforting ending where shared pain erases harm. Ours did not. Rachel had sat beside my husband's bed in a coat I gave her. She had accepted his lies because questioning them threatened the future she wanted. I could recognize her humanity without inviting her into my home. Daniel's criminal case continued. Vantage recovered most of the Northline funds. Victor pleaded guilty to a lesser offense and received probation after cooperating. Daniel eventually accepted a plea agreement involving restitution, home confinement, and a professional ban from handling client funds. He avoided prison, which disappointed people who wanted a cleaner ending. Real consequences are rarely designed for audience satisfaction. He could no longer work in executive real estate. His name appeared in search results beside the fraud case. Lauren's new company dissolved before opening, and she denied knowing the source of his money. Whether she lied to investigators or Daniel lied to her, I never learned. By then, the answer no longer belonged to my life. 18 months after the hospital call, I saw Daniel in a coffee shop in River North. I was meeting Jamal's mother to discuss his high school scholarship. Daniel sat alone near the window with a cold cup in front of him. His beard was uneven, his coat inexpensive, but the largest difference was not what he had lost. It was the absence of people responding when he entered a room. He stood when he saw me. Claire. I kept walking toward the counter. Please. I just want to apologize without lawyers. I turned because I wanted to. No whether hearing him would change anything. His eyes filled with tears. I was afraid, he said. Everything you built made me feel unnecessary. Rachel made me feel admired. The money made me feel like I had something no one could take. I kept adding lies because I didn't know how to go back. It was the most honest explanation he had ever given me. It was also not an excuse. You could have told me you were unhappy. I thought you would leave. So you made leaving the only safe thing I could do. He looked down. Do you hate me? For a long time, hatred had felt like the last room in our marriage. It kept me connected to him through arguments that happened only in my head. Therapy, work, Mom's death, and hundreds of sunrise miles had slowly emptied that room. No, I said. Hope flickered across his face, and I understood why people sometimes lie when the truth is kinder but less negotiable. I don't love you either. The hope went out. Then what do you feel? I remembered the phone ringing at 2:17, Rachel's hands over his, the doctor's quiet voice, my debit card paying for their treatment, and the cold parking garage where Maya told me not to negotiate against myself. I remembered the forged-in voices, the 2 fire doors, the courtroom elevator, and Mom's scarlet jacket. Distance, I said. And relief. I left him by the window and sat with Jamal's mother at a table across the room. She brought his latest report card. He had earned an A in physics and built a robotic gripper from recycled materials. While she talked, I forgot Daniel was there. That was the freedom I had mistaken for revenge, not his ruined career, not the enforced agreement, not the frozen account, not even the truth printed beneath my photograph. Freedom was forgetting to monitor him. 2 years after the emergency room, the Bright Steps board promoted me to president. I moved to a lighter apartment 3 blocks from the lake, not because Daniel had touched the old condo, but because I wanted windows that caught the morning sun. I filled the rooms with plants, bright art, mystery novels, and chairs for guests. Maya kept a key. No one else received one by default. On the anniversary of Mom's death, we launched the Margaret Mendoza Health Scholars Fund for students entering nursing, pharmacy, and public health. The first grant was exactly 3 times the amount Daniel charged to my card at the hospital. I did not plan the number that way, but when Noah pointed it out, I smiled. Money had once carried the evidence of my humiliation. Now it carried young people through doors. I still wake when the phone rings late. My heart still remembers before my mind does. But I no longer reach across the bed for someone who made danger feel like home. I switch on the lamp, put on my glasses, and answer as myself. That call at 2:17 really was an emergency. It simply was not Daniel's. It was my life calling to tell me that the man I kept trying to save had turned my love into cover, my body into collateral, and my name into an exit plan. The hospital did not destroy my marriage. It illuminated what had already been infected. I walked out believing I had lost everything. In truth, I had finally stopped losing myself. Now, when dawn reaches my windows, I remember that survival did not begin with a courtroom victory. It began in a hospital corridor, when I chose to believe the evidence in front of me and walked toward a life no one else could use as cover.